CARP's founders. So CARP was an idea brought about by someone named Reverend Sungmyung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. They're major advocates for world peace. They initiated major movements centered on universal principles, the types of principles that we learn here at CARP. And Dr. Moon actually initiated the Peace Starts With Me movement. Maybe for those of you that have come to a lot of CARP events before, it's a slogan that we really stand for. Peace starts with me, because we believe that each individual is so important, and what we work on in ourselves can be spread out into those that we interact with. Yeah, so they really believe in young people, that we can make the huge impact on our society, and that each student and young person should be supported in our growth. And so we're grateful to them for bringing about this idea of CARP. But of course, CARP has come today through the hard work of students who have put a lot of time and investment into making CARP an awesome club that can be here for you guys. So I just had a few words on CARP, or a lot of words on CARP. CARP is an organization of chapters on college campuses created for students by students. As CARP, we believe that the ideal is created within and practiced in daily habits. We study and research these ideals and principles taught by great role models and teachers in every field throughout history. After learning, we practice. Change doesn't happen overnight, but rather incrementally through daily, consistent effort. And that's what we practice. CARP offers a loving environment for students to encourage growth. So I wanted to share those words because I think they really explain what CARP is here for. It's here to create the environment, bring out awesome discussions, different topics for each of us to come and to learn something new, to think about ideas that maybe we haven't thought of ourselves, to discuss in engaging conversations with others, and also to learn new tools that we can apply to our lives, things that we can practice. So I really wanted to share that because today we have a great topic and a great speaker that's going to share a really important tool that sometimes we forget about. So I'm going to introduce our speaker our speaker tonight is Junta Naito, and he's going to be talking on the topic of why we should be grateful. So on the topic of gratitude. So Junta Naito, if you guys don't know him, you can get to know him as he shares his presentation tonight. He is a communications major. He's a CARP Chabot VIP. So he was a former president, vice president for CARP, but he is always one of our best supporters, a student that has really worked hard to make CARP a club that can support all of us. And so it's also his final semester here at Chabot. So we are so grateful that he is our speaker for this final Zoom night. So if you guys can unmute yourselves and we can give a warm round of applause to Junta Naito.
Let's go, Junta!
Thank you so much, Monica. I really appreciate that introduction. And it's so funny you mentioned as like a VIP. Yeah,
VIP man.
but thank you. I really appreciate it. And yes, I'm really grateful just to be able to join this call with you guys. People coming in from Las Vegas, from I believe Canada. So like so many different places. And I feel like this can only happen during this kind of time. So already I feel very grateful that we could be doing this because of this present time. And I'm really grateful that I could be sharing this topic about why we should be grateful, because it challenges me to practice gratitude a lot more in my life. And so before diving into the topic, I just wanted to just start off right here. As we know, we are approaching the end of the semester, the end of the year, and maybe a lot of different kind of thoughts, a lot of different kind of emotions might be going through your head. Maybe on one hand, you might feel like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till the semester is over. I already have my summer plans. Maybe I booked flights, or maybe not because of the situation, but maybe you have a lot of things already planned, right? Maybe on the other hand, maybe you might feel kind of maybe some regrets or feeling unaccomplished, or there's some wishes unfulfilled. You might be feeling like, man, there's so much things that I wish I could have done by the end of this semester. Or maybe just be like, all right, the semester's over, what's next? You know, and you're just kind of like going through with it, right? But I think especially with the current situation that we have right now, I think it's very easy for us to kind of fixate our eyes on the negative aspects of our lives. And I think that's why it's so important that before we move forward into ending this semester, ending this year, and going into summer, it's so important for us to step back first. And I wanted to share just this quote from an American philosopher. He said that we do not learn from experience, but we learn from reflecting on experience. And I'm sure many of you guys can relate to this, but I have this bad habit of just kind of just grinding, you know, just turning the gears on and just running basically and doing a lot of things, but not taking the time and the habit to just like say, hey, Junta, just hold on, pause, think about all the things that you're going through and reflect. And actually, it's through this process that we really learn to grow and learn to process all the different experiences that we go through. Otherwise, we may just be getting like 50% of the experiences that we're going through, right? But we want to make sure that we can really absorb all the nutrients that's in the experiences that we have. So in order to properly reflect on our past semester and past year, we have to look at both the highlights, right? The good times that happened throughout the semester, the victories, but also we have to look at the challenges and the hurdles. But in order to be able to digest these experiences properly, we really need the power of gratitude. And so this is the topic that I want to dive into more. And I really feel like this is a mindset and a life principle that you could live by and is a way to really live your life very effectively. And I just wanted to introduce it to you today. And I'm going to be going through a main framework from an article I found. You can look it up too. It's actually really good. It's called Why Gratitude is Good. And it's written by one of the leading scientific experts on gratitude. And he actually happens to be locally from the Bay Area. His name is Dr. Robert Emmons, and he's actually a psychology professor at UC Davis. And so a lot of what I'm going to be speaking on will be touching upon his article. But today I wanted to share about why we should be grateful, how does a grateful, or what does gratitude look like, or how does a grateful person look like? And then lastly, I wanted to share about how we can cultivate gratitude in our daily lives. So just jumping right into it, why should we be grateful? What's the benefits of having gratitude? One thing I already mentioned, right, is that gratitude has power. And Dr. Emmons touches upon this, that it has the power to heal, to energize, and to change our lives. And it can help us to heal from our past hurts and give us hope for the future. And for people that are grateful, which I will cover a little bit more in the future, later in the presentation, there's a lot of advantages, right? There's a lot more success. They feel a lot happier, but they're not just doing, or they're not just feeling good things, but they're also doing good things. Whether it's like acts of generosity, compassion, being more forgiving, being more pro-social, helping others. And this is what other people are saying about them, not just what they're saying about themselves, right? So even in the survey that they did, right, they're talking about like, oh, you know, how has Henry, right, this one person, been helping around in the house? And other people in the house shared, yes, he's definitely been a lot more active in the house. So these are the different points that he goes over. So the first is that gratitude allows us to celebrate the present. And this helps us to notice the positive aspects in our life more and really bring it out to the surface. And I feel that also was what I mentioned earlier, helps us to really absorb the goodness and not just think of it like, oh yeah, that was a good moment, or I'm grateful for that, but really helps us to absorb the goodness in that moment. And then the second is that it blocks toxic negative emotions. And I really feel like it's kind of like this protective shield from again, all the negative thinking that may be going through our mind, right? Gratitude really helps to just like, cut off that and just think about what are the positive aspects that I can focus on. Third is that grateful people are more stress resilient. And I think this makes a lot of sense because of course, right, when you're stressed out, you're focusing on a lot of the negativities or the fears or worries and concerns. And I know I have that tendency as well, but if you're able to be grateful, then your energy and focus is on a completely different aspect, right? The positive aspect. And so physically, it really helps you a lot. So it's great to be able to see that connection. The last point that he talks about is that grateful people have a higher sense of self-worth. And I'll be going into this a little bit later too, but this is the sense that someone else is looking out for you. And again, I'll go into it more deeper later, but when you have gratitude, you're able to see that someone else is investing into you, taking care of you, and really guiding you. And because of that, you gain a deeper sense of self-worth. So these are the 4 whys that he shares. And again, you can go a lot more in depth with each of these, but I just wanted to share you these before I get into the rest. And so the next is just defining what is gratitude. Because I think, for the most part, I think maybe people feel like, oh yeah, I know what gratitude is. And even going into this presentation, I was like, yeah, like, oh yeah, gratitude is very simple, right? You just say thank you, whatever, right? But actually, gratitude is a lot more deeper than that. And this is what Dr. Emmons defined gratitude as. First, he described it as the affirmation of goodness. And this is just affirming the good things that you have in your life, the benefits, the gifts, and to just acknowledge that life is good. Of course, it doesn't mean that life is perfect, right? Of course, we're going to have still different worries, complaints, burdens that we still have to manage. But we have to be able to look at our life in whole and to see the goodness in it. And actually, going further, you'll see just the positive effect to this kind of attitude. And I really like that he uses the word affirmation, because I think goodness really needs to be affirmed. It's something that needs to be claimed, seized. Otherwise, it's just, again, a bunch of floating experiences that you're going through in your life, right? But I think you have to take a moment to pause and really seize the goodness that you just experienced, and to be able to really take out all the goodness from that, and not just like, just going day by day or just going through the motions. And the second point that he mentions about gratitude is the attribution to goodness. And this is, I believe, the even more important part. It's figuring out where this goodness comes from, to recognize that there's a cause to this goodness, and being a recipient or a receiver of this goodness implies that there's a giver to this goodness. So it begs the question of, who do I give thanks to? And you have to be able to acknowledge that. And actually, directly from his article, he says, true gratitude involves a humble dependence on others. We acknowledge that other people, or even higher powers, if you have a spiritual mindset, gave us many gifts, big and small, to help us achieve the goodness in our lives. And I think that's very important, to be able to acknowledge the source of your goodness. And I think this is a very important aspect of being able to affirm gratitude, because then you're not just taking credit for yourself, but you're giving it back to who gave it to you. And I'll be going deeper into this later in the presentation. And here I want to share just what does a grateful person look like. And here's the definition that Dr. Emmons gives. He said that the grateful person accepts all of life as a gift or as a potential gift. And so he goes further to say that gratitude really happens on a spectrum. It's not like something that's just like, black and white, but it really ranges, right? And I want to just start first, as I described earlier, just being able to be grateful in the moment, right? If you, for example, like if you get good grades, if you get paid, right? If like today, some of my housemates, they got Panda Express for everyone in the house. Of course, in that moment, like you're super grateful and you want to express your gratitude to everyone, whoever gave that, right? But again, that's a temporary moment of gratitude, and it's a short-term level of gratitude. And the next level is being able to shift perspectives and shifting this lens of scarcity, of feeling like, oh, I'm lacking or I'm deprived of something or not having enough, to the lens of abundance, of being able to see that actually I've been given so much in my life and there's so much goodness in my life. And actually, at just one moment when this kind of shift was like very sharp, or it was almost like day and night. And I remember this. It was my time when I was in the Philippines, doing kind of like a volunteer service project. And basically, we're working all day to be able to renovate this school. And so by the end of the day, we're super tired. We're just wiped out, right? And we're ready to go to bed. And so I remember, we were mixed with the American volunteers as well as like the local volunteers that were there too. But I remember like the American volunteers, like we would just, as we're getting ready to go to bed, we pull out our like nice mats and we put our nice sleeping bags on top of it. And then like we put our pillow, and it was just like all this, right? But for us, it's like, oh yeah, it's a basic necessity, right? And I remember watching one person just going to bed like that. And then right next to him was one of the local volunteers from the Philippines. And all they had was just like a thin mat. It was like not even like a centimeter in thickness, right? And some people were even just sleeping right on the floor. But that was like a big shift for me. I was like, whoa, like it made me see just how much we are given in our life and how much we take for granted. And so again, that was just one shift for me, right? From a lens of scarcity to a lens of abundance, really seeing that, hey, we are given so much in our life. And then just the last part I wanted to talk about is being grateful in uncertainty. And I think this is really something that requires a lot of faith. And because, of course, right, we can shift from seeing a challenge to being able to be grateful for the challenge, right? But sometimes there are things that we're uncertain about the future, about what's going to happen. And it's hard for us to be grateful for that because there's a lot of oblivion. It's just up in the air. And I know that that's really the case right now, right? But I think this is where faith really comes into practice. And we have to believe that there's going to be a new opportunity in the situation, for example, and to be able to make active effort to make it work. And so I really think that faith means that you really believe that you're being led, you're being guided, and again, that you are being invested into. And again, if you're of a spiritual background, you can attribute this to somewhat of a higher source of unconditional, endless amount of love that's investing into you and really cares about your situation. And this is just one perspective that's shared from the Bible. And this is what it describes faith as. That now, faith, conviction of things not seen. And so, again, I feel like a lot of us are in this situation right now. We're all in this together right now with this pandemic. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty in this time. And it's hard for us to be grateful for what's unseen and to try to have conviction that things are going to get better. But I think this is really important to be able to think about how we can attribute our gratitude to something that's infinite, right? And in psychology, we talk about something called a self-serving bias. I don't know, maybe some of you guys have heard about it, especially if you're like a psych major. I actually heard this in my comm class. But what a self-serving bias means is that as human beings, it's easy for us to attribute the goodness that happens to ourselves or when goodness happens, it's easy for us to give credit to ourselves and say like, oh yeah, it's because of what I did, what I did, or I practiced this or did that. But when bad things happen to us, it's very easy for us to attribute the blame on other people and say like it's actually their fault, or because they didn't do this, right? But I feel like when you're able to attribute your faith into something higher, then you really tap into attributing into infinite gratitude, to be able to think about like just the infinite source of love investing into you and leading and guiding you. And I feel that that gives us an infinite capacity of gratitude and of growth as well. And in my personal experience, I felt that as well. And even Steve Jobs says this too. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down and has made all the difference in my life. And so I think this is being able to really just have gratitude even in times of uncertainty, that of course I don't think any of us are really sure where we're going to be in the next month, in the next few months, but trust that we're being led and guided, and that we're going to go through this and come out of this together. And I think just having that attitude and perspective is what's going to get us forward. And so this is a quote from our CARP co-founder, Dr. Hakcha Hamoon, and she said that we must always start each day with a grateful heart. We're gradually aging. All people are very interested in health, but the most important thing about health is always living with a positive, happy, grateful heart. And so I think she really just touches upon just making sure that at the core, we're really focusing on the health that's within our heart, and being able to have positivity, being able to have gratitude, especially in the most difficult and challenging times. Again, because it's the most beneficial and effective thing to do. It's not to ignore the challenges that are going on, but having this attitude that I'm going to find a way and I'm going to be able to make it out of this. I think that is the leading force to actually arrive at different solutions. So with that said, how are we going to cultivate this gratitude? How can we be this grateful person? Because again, like I said from the very beginning, it's not just a feeling, but we have to go beyond this feeling and come to this place of being. And Dr. Emmons talks about these different evidence-based practices, and I just wanted to share a few. There's a lot of different practices that he mentioned, and I wanted to categorize them in different categories. The first is affirming the goodness. And so he talks a lot about being able to have a gratitude journal. And this is just one format. There's many different ways that you can do this, but he just emphasizes the importance of a practice that can intentionally and consciously call our attention. So gratitude journal is just one aspect of it, right? Just taking like 20 minutes, even just 10 minutes out of your day at the end of the day to just write down 3 things that you were grateful for, and really try to draw them out, right? Even the challenging moments, and again, even the uncertain moments. And this really helps us to eliminate, ungrateful thoughts, feelings of like, oh, I deserve this, or I didn't deserve this, any feeling of entitlement. Something else he mentions is visual reminders. He says that not being able to have gratitude sometimes is because we forget, or it's not something that's like ingrained in us, right? So maybe we can write like a quote that can help us to be grateful, or we can put up pictures in our room of people that we're grateful for, or experiences that we're grateful for. And these visual reminders are really good to help us to go back to that kind of mindset. And again, meditation. You don't have to necessarily write anything down, but even just taking the time to pause and look back on the good experiences, or trying to internalize and turn even the challenges into good experiences. And again, if you have a spiritual background, you can do it through prayer and really attributing the goodness to a higher source and someone of unconditional love. And the second category is expressing your gratitude, right? And this is a really important part, right? Because no matter how much you're feeling grateful and you feel like you're in this Zen mode, if you're not able to project that towards other people, right, it just kind of remains dormant. So he really emphasizes the importance of this outward action to be able to give back. So one way that's pretty obvious, right, is verbally, right? Verbally tell them thank you for what you did. And I encourage you to be very specific too, because you don't want to just say thank you, right? But being able to let them know exactly for what. If it was for something they said, or an action that they did, just be very specific with why you're grateful. And then random acts of kindness, right? It can be very spontaneous, right? Just buying your housemates Panda Express, or baking a cake or cookies, or just doing something spontaneously is a good way to just channel that gratitude outwards. Another one is writing gratitude letters. Yeah, you can just express that physically, right? And then even just spending quality time, because I know that everyone receives love in many different ways. So these are just some of the different ways that we can express and channel our gratitude outward. But again, there's so many different kinds of ways, and I encourage you to be creative in how you can do that. And one last thing I wanted to mention was that actually, I think right now is like a great opportunity. I don't know if you guys knew, but it's Teacher Appreciation Week, all the way up until Friday. So I think this is a really great way, especially as we're ending the semester. Something that I did last year was I painted quote cards for my teachers. And for some of the people that I couldn't, I just verbally expressed them thank you for the semester of being there, teaching me, and investing into all of us as students. And these things really go a long way for teachers. So I really encourage you to do that on this week, taking the opportunity, which should, of course, be every week, right? Another, of course, is Mother's Day coming up this Sunday. Really appreciate your mamas. I think they're really someone we, for the most part, really feel just unconditional love, right? So being able to express gratitude, and especially to those who you attribute the goodness to, I think is really important. And so, yes, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys for being able to hear me out, listen to me. And again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to practice gratitude further. Thank you.
Thank you, Junta.
Junta. Thank you,
Gratitude.
Junta. Grateful for that.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much.